chair of an IT group, and it's board meeting day. So this is my lunch break from the board meeting.
Cool, no rest for the wicked then. So, well, I'll let you get on. You shouldn't be talking to me. Go on, get back to the board meeting.
Yeah.
Hello and welcome to eCommerce Matters, brought to you by BlackCurve. We help e-commerce businesses make pricing decisions. Today's episode is entitled Building Merchants, How to Price When You Don't Have Competitor Data. I'm Philip Huthwaite, CEO of BlackCurve, and I'm delighted to be joined by special guest Alan Timothy, CEO of Bubo.ai. Bubo significantly improves your net profit within weeks, leading-edge AI technology and market expertise for dynamic pricing recommendations. I hope I've got that right, Alan. They can be found at Bubo.ai, and it dovetails very nicely into BlackCurve's offering, hence why really pleased to have you here, Alan. So without further ado, let's get cracking. Welcome, Alan.
Thank you for that. I'm very glad to be here.
How are you doing today? Where in the world are you dialing into this podcast?
I'm in Richmond, up in the northeast.
Ah, not Richmond upon Thames. You're Richmond up in the north.
No. No, the place where William Hague was until recently the sitting MP.
Ah, okay. Well, depending on which your political persuasion is, maybe keep quiet or shout about that, I think. So so we've got opposite ends of the country here. So I'm down in London direction, and we've got Alan up in the north. So we've got conflicting viewpoints as well, even by geography. So Alan, so it'd be great if you could start off by telling us a bit about your background and why you feel that you're relevant to talk to us about all the pricing related challenges, problems, and solutions.
So first of all, I'm new to pricing, relatively, despite the grey hair. So I got into pricing about 4 years ago while working for a very large car parts manufacturer, billion turnover, 200 branches, and I was asked to look at how to improve their gross margin. So being a bit of an academic and I went and looked at all of the things that you could do and what they were doing currently and their options. And at the end of a 2-year investigation, I came to the conclusion that nothing they had been doing or the tools that they had were actually working. So I then went back to the drawing board to say, if you were starting from scratch, what could you do, what should you do, and how would it work? And that was the birth of Bubo.ai, forged in the hard-won areas of gross margin management in a distributor. So one of the big problems they had that brought the sort of skills I have, which is as data and data scientist, is they had 100,000 customers and 120,000 products, which meant there were 12 billion variations that you needed to look at so that you could, for any given customer on any given day, give them a price for that product. So with 12 billion, for those at least familiar with Excel, it's way in advance of what your typical Excel can do. The government found that. It can't even count COVID cases. It stood no chance with calculating that one. So you can't use the conventional types of tools, including the pricing tools. You then have to look at new ways. And with my background in data and technology, that's what we do.
And so what specifically was that a Eureka moment that you said, oh, hang on a minute, this particular automotive company has got a challenge with making customer-led, kind of customer-specific pricing decisions? Was there a particular Eureka moment that said, right, hang on a minute, I'm going to commercialize this and create a company that solves this particular need?
Yes. I mean, I'm not unfamiliar to the problem because I used to run a builder's merchants in my younger years, and it was exactly the same problem. If you've got people coming in, you've got a moment of truth, and the person coming in is not going to say, oh, that's great, I love that price. Can you put another 10% on? It's like, can you not knock a bit more off for me? Can I have it any cheaper? So the prize here is a big prize, and the Eureka moment is knowing how to solve it. And the first thing to solve it is to start to recognize that customers are all different. and they value different products differently from different suppliers and even down to the product. So if you come to the builders merchants, if you're a builder, you will be absolutely critical on the price of concrete, but you won't care a lot about the cost of timber for a 4x2 piece of wood. If you're a joiner, you'll care critically about the 4x2 piece of wood, and you won't care so much about the concrete. So people's views of products are different, people's views on the quality of products different, and understanding how you use that information to give the person the right product at the right price for you and them.
So there's a particular challenge in that, isn't it? That you've already touched upon two different challenges that I'm picking up on. Is you've got a multitude of customers, right? Whether you're, especially from a building merchant's perspective, you've got the I'll put my hand up, the DIY chap who speaks to his builder and says, right, you can get a better deal down the road if you go to this building merchant rather than going up to B&Q. So I turn up and try not to wear my suit when I turn up to this one, and try and make myself look a bit more like a builder, so I get maybe a better deal. All the way to, you've got the smaller builders that might be doing one house at a time, all the way up to what I describe as sort of the bigger commercial outfits that are doing multiple developments, right? And I mean, we've both got experience of working with different sizes of building merchants, and one of the themes is one of the common themes is that seems to be a unique price list almost for every single customer. Is that something you've seen as well?
Yeah, certainly the starting price list is unique, and then you'll have varying degrees of shaving off it, either because of how much you buy or where you are, and how the pricing is running in the builders merchants, but it all starts from the same product price list and then discounted down, and usually through not a lot of intelligence. And then coupled on top of the standard price list and those discounts, you've got the Friday specials or the monthly specials where somebody says, oh, well, let's do a deal. And you do the deal, you'll do 10% off something or 15%, you'll send it out, but nobody then follows through to see what the response has been, and should you've done that to everybody. And one of my little things that used to annoy me when I was in builders merchanting, we used to do invoice stuffers. It was the chief executives. We're sending the invoice out. Let's give them a leaflet with a discount on. So I always argued we had the best informed finance directors who never bought anything of where the best deals were, and we never told the guy who was making the purchasing what the deal was. So it's about, it's a difficult combination of getting the right information to the right people about the right product and understanding what the consequences of that decision is.
We'll have to get the FD down to make the decisions, the buying decisions, won't we? I don't know how to twist their arms to turn up.
Cheap.
Can I have a discount, please? So how are, from your experience today, take us through how are building merchants pricing today? I mean, typically, what I've experienced is that they have a list price, right, which might get printed on a catalogue, or more increasing now, obviously, printed on the website. But beyond that, what happens? How do they set up all the other customer specific price lists and so forth? How does that all go about?
The most predominant one is discounting bands, and the various drivers that the different merchants have for the different bands. The most classical is linked to your monthly spend. Spend £5,000, get 5% off. Spend £10,000, get 10% off. And then often that's woven together with some special project-based discounts and interlaid with other things. So I'm currently doing some work with a builders merchants that on the 30,000 customer base has got 256,000 discount terms in place.
Goodness
but
me.
The word's operative. They are discount terms. So it's what excuse does somebody come up with somewhere in the organisation that shaves some money off? what the recommended retail price is. So that level of banding in various forms is the most common. Less common, we come across people who price against the competitor that you will see a lot of on the online world. And if you start to price against your competitor, all that is for everybody in that local marketplace is a race to the bottom. Because if you're pricing it, they'll just go to somebody else, and it'll just end up everybody not doing very well. But it's still out there, and generally because there's no better alternatives of how to do it.
So we'll come back to that in a moment. So hold that thought. So in terms of setting up the price lists at the moment, these particular building merchants that have 30,000 or so customers and might have 30,000 or so equivalent customer specific terms or bandings. How do those terms get agreed originally? Is that with the FD that's agreeing the terms? Does the individuals that are turning up and buying from the store know what band they're on? It seems like a bit of a logistical nightmare, let alone for the business to manage it. I certainly wouldn't remember that I was I think I probably only shop at about 3 stores if I'm honest, and put my hands up. But I know that I'm a quote unquote special customer at one of them, but I wouldn't know that entitles me to 5 or 10% off.
So I think at the point of negotiation where the salesman comes as likely to be a customer and you agree some terms and they are notionally written down and then generally entirely ignored. Because depending on what profession you're in within the building industry, you will know the price of your 10 most popular items to the penny. So for instance, if you're a builder, then I can tell you now the cost of cement, plasterboard in particular, you will know to the penny because you're buying it every day, and the current supply situations you may be shopping around, but that's your benchmark. When you come to the cost of the shovel, even though you may be entitled to a discount on it, as long as it's less than £10, you don't actually care and you won't look. So the problem you have with the discounted by bands is on the bits that are important, yes, that may work, but then you're given a discount on a shovel where he doesn't care in the first place. So you're giving him money he doesn't appreciate and probably doesn't want really because he didn't know he wanted it in the first place, and you're giving your money away, so you're both losing from that transaction. And that's where the banding problem comes from, but it's negotiated at the point, you'll get 5% of everything. But you don't actually want 5% everything. What you want is 5% of the 10 items that you buy every day, which are critical to your line of work.
And why do you think it is that the terms are being negotiated to start with if they're being ignored? Or do you think is there a particular reason they're being ignored? What's your experience of that?
It's just the culture that the industry, along with other industries, I would add, have trained the customer to expect a discount. So I used to run a builder's merchant, so we did the survey. If you ask the builder's merchant staff what's the most important thing a customer wants is price, if you ask the customer, it's typically number 4. So number 1 is, have you got it in stock? Number 2 is, can you get it to me? Number 3 is, what time can you get it to me? And by the way, how much is it going to cost me? Because if you've got 20 men on a site waiting for a delivery of bricks, the cost of those 20 men not doing anything compared to whatever you've managed to save on the bricks is entirely irrelevant. And in the car industry, if you've got a car on a ramp and you need to go home in the night, or you're leaving your loaner car out, suddenly the cost of the part becomes irrelevant to the cost of getting the work complete. So there's a mismatch between the seller and the buyer. What the seller actually wants is the right product at the right place and at the right price, but the right price is the least important of all of the attributes to him. But because we trained them, he goes, can I have it cheaper? And so when we look at what's driving people to do more discounts, there are 3 drivers. One, the price of the product was wrong in the first place. Secondly, the person, the branch or the sales advisor is needlessly giving money away because he doesn't understand the process. And thirdly, you train the customer so well, he just hammers you and nickels and dimes you. And if you've got somebody who nickels and dimes you with a sales advisor who's not very strong, then you're just going to give the money away. But the sad thing of it is, the customer doesn't actually generally appreciate it, because he's not going to charge any more for building the extension or any less for building the extension. It just gets lost in the rounding. He's doing it for a game, not for financial gain.
Well, I have to say, I mean, a few years ago, we did a big extension. I know I'm not representative of the building sector from a personal point of view, but we did a big extension on our house, and it annoyed me when I went to this particular supplier, and every time I went, I couldn't get the rate that I'd agreed last time, and it was all. And I became in a situation where I was annoyed I didn't get as much of a discount as I managed to negotiate last time. And then when I went in, you have this whole expectation. So am I right in thinking that you are passionate about encouraging people to move away from this banding philosophy? Is that what you're trying to coach people towards?
Yes, because if you do the banding philosophy, you will end up giving people discounts on products where they never expected, wouldn't want, or don't care. So you are losing out because you're giving the money away, and more importantly, you're giving the money away and you're getting nothing back because the customer's not appreciating the fact that you've given them the discount.
So how do you embark on that then? So if you've got a building merchant which has been around for a number of building merchants, been around for decades, right? If not centuries, and it's very much ingrained in culture, and then also because it's ingrained in that company culture, the customers expect this I'm going to get 5% off and 10% off. How are you embarking on this? How are you changing hearts and minds?
Right. So first of all, what we're not doing is not saying you shouldn't give discounts. What we're saying is it's how you calculate the starting price in the first place. So we calculate the starting point by doing customer value pricing. So understanding what that customer is willing to pay for that product on that day. And then when you understand how that, or what that customer is willing to pay, then if you want to put a discount in, you can artificially create an extra 10% on that. So the sales advisor can give 10% off, so you end up with the price where you want to be. And it's also, most importantly, the price where the customer is happy.
Okay, so if you were to engage with a building merchant now, how do you get up and running of this? How do they access your? I suppose it might be worth kind of stepping back and actually going back to first base principles. When they're engaging with your company, what is it that you're giving them? What is it that they get?
So ultimately, what they get is a new pricing file that says, for this customer, for this product, charge this amount. And depending on the product and exactly what it is, that could be by day of week. So to give you an example, one of my clients in the building material space sells concrete. Concrete on a Monday morning is worth more than a concrete on a Friday afternoon. Because if you wear concrete on a Friday afternoon, the cat walks over it and you've got to relay it on the Monday. So there's a premium earlier in the week. So the price is not just for the concrete and the type of concrete, there's also a time element. So we give the customer, the builders merchants, for this customer, for this product, on this day, charge this price. And that specifics, I'll give you some real examples. So if you look at a geographically diverse builders merchants, because most of them are these days, then certain parts of the country, sometimes referred to as north of the border, always want to buy a cheaper product than people in other regions, such as where you are. They will always want a better quality product. So first of all is identifying which product they're likely to want to buy from a good or from an own label through to a premium brand, and how they want to buy it. So the first element is to look at each customer as an individual customer, and not by a band, or customers are all unique and they all have unique attributes and they will buy differently. So it's understanding what that price is for that product on that day, and that's your starting point. So the way we would engage with the builders merchants is recognizing this is all new. Is to first of all, give me 10 pieces of core data and I'll tell you how much money you're leaving on the table. And that comes at no cost. So the second thing is to do a proof of concept, because everybody's very cynical about pricing, as you will know, but they're all in the same game. So we will do a proof of concept on an A/B test. So you do your best bit of pricing to these 100 customers, 1,000 customers. We'll do ours, and we will show you how much money you can uplift your gross margin by in a real situation. Because in the traditional industry, like builders merchants, they are men of the earth. They believe what they see, not in some geek trying to tell them there's a new mathematical model. So you have to prove it. And then once you prove it, then you get into it. But ultimately, it is, here is a pricing file that tells you what customer that will pay on that day for that product.
And just to kind of peel back the curtain a bit, I mean, it is. I'm right in thinking, what kind of data do you need to have access to? You mentioned that you ask for a series of data sets to show this is how much money you're leaving on the table. What kind of data are you looking at for that?
Well, for the initial bit, it's the transaction files. So what has any customer paid for that product over ideally a year? So we look at it. This is very much at the transactional file level. So it's the lowest level of data they will have, and that's for the first bit. Where we start getting into the proof of concept and the productionization, we take in lots of other pieces of data, both internal and external. So we'll mesh in their transactional file and need their credit terms, their payment terms, site locations, along with external pieces of data such as is it a limited company or is it a partnership, such as how long it's been trading. So typically when we start to calculate the price, we are including between 30 and 50 variables in the methodology that we use to calculate the price for that customer, because it is customer by customer.
And what gives you the credibility for this calculation? I'm right in thinking that this has been developed with some there is mathematics in it, right? So I'm gonna put my hand up and say that my maths is pretty good, but some of the guys that have come up with the models for us for BlackCurve's pricing engine, is above my pay grade and level. So what give us a flavour for the types of decision making and what kind of minds have created it?
So this is into data science. So this is in to what some people refer as artificial intelligence, because the system also learns. So this is AI, machine learning, and burst computing. Because if you think of the client I referred to earlier, with 12 billion calculations, to put that through a standard type of server run by another pricing company who I won't name, it was going to take 145 days. So it's not just the mathematics, it's the mathematics integrated into a learning platform coupled with very high power computing. So the system needs to learn. So if you give somebody a price and they don't accept it, you need to learn that and change the price. Or if they do accept it, then you perhaps put it up. So one of the calculations we perform, and this isn't just a sort of a single, we'll give you the prices, we will end up with a target price for that product that we think that customer will pay. But we also look at what they're paying now against the target price, and we do a calculation on their willingness to pay, and then that determines the rate we change the price at. So some people have ended up getting very cheap products, and they don't really care. They just happen to have got a cheap product one day, a bit like yourself, and it's not to be repeated. So where you start the pricing process and get them on the journey depends on their willingness to pay. So you've got the two bits, the target price and the willingness to pay, and the process using artificial intelligence that learns every time the customer interacts with the system, of not just for the product, but for the whole suite of products, of how they reacted, did they buy, what the price they bought at, how much they bought, did the volume change.
And so
this is advanced physics.
And so if you've engaged with a building merchant and they've said, yeah, I like the sound of that, and they've given you a bit of data, and they're like, yeah, okay, I can see a need. How do you then, looking to set up a proof of concept, how do you agree or decide which products go into that proof of concept? Is it, do they pick that? Do you suggest, what goes into the selection process?
And you're right, they pick it. So we ask them to pick
the hardest ones, of course.
Well, what I've found over the years is if I have anything to say with it, the first question I back is, it only worked on those because you picked them. and this is oblivious to the product. You'll make more margin gain on some than others, but you'll make the margin gain. So ideally, what we'd like to say is, here is a branch. You take half the customers in the branch. We'll take the other half of the customers in the branch. To pick 4 or 5 product categories, so you've got a range of products there rather than necessarily down to the products. So if you do, say, fixtures and fittings, you've got screws that you'll sell out by the box, load and specialists. So you pick them. You pick which half of the customers you want. You pick which products you want, and then we'll take our 2 systems and compare them to each other. And that way, this is entirely, it works, and you set the parameters, not me.
And how are you comparing? So how do you communicate that your control group has performed better than the control group of the customer that's taking part in the proof of concept? What are the key metrics that you communicate in that process?
Well, because I've got the transaction file feeding in, and typically if it's a 2-month pilot, I'll have had every 2 weeks the transaction file with what somebody actually paid for the products. So at the end of a 2-month pilot, we can go, this is how many times you sold the product, and this is what you sold it for, this is how many times my group bought the product, and this is what they paid for it, and this is the delta. And this is the direction of travel that it's going in, and we'll give them that data back. So we believe in total transparency. So this is not a black box. I mean, it is, but it doesn't have to be. We'll happily walk you through it and share your numbers and our numbers so you can see it. So one of the things we also offer, if people have the capability, is we will train your staff on the models we build so that you can maintain them going forward if that's what you want to do.
And so, is one of the metrics, I'll start again, one of the metrics that we track when we're, a lot of the time actually, this is specifically to building merchants that seem to be most worried about this, is kind of average margin, right? And how that performs. I mean, it's a bit of a loaded gun sometimes, especially when you're doing price testing. But how is that? Are you protecting average margin? Do you see a lot of the recommendations that you make are actually increasing the price, or just preventing the discount? The discount. It's almost like you're giving them the safety net to not discount too much.
I think either way we're going to increase the price. So this is calculating the maximum price that customer is willing to pay for that product. So theoretically it could go down, but generally the idea is to go up. So the other way I describe this is, you're going to set a price for a product. If you sold 100%, so everybody came and asked you about red bricks, bought at your price, you are too low. So there's a number, there's a percentage, generally we'd recognize about 75%, which is the optimal between the volume you can achieve and the margin you can achieve. And we've got this line, and you're moving it up or down, so you're maintaining your volume against the margin you achieve. Now, the other thing that also lets you see is, if a manufacturer comes to you, the builder's merchant, and says, I'd like you to sell more of these, the system will tell you at what discount level the volume will be. Or if you want to sell this many of this product, this is the price that you will need to put it at, because that's the elasticity in your customer set.
And what if the product hasn't sold before? How do you go about that? Do you leave that alone, or are you primarily supporting the decisions on the core product set?
We are predominantly supporting decisions on the core sets, but what we would do is new products is look for like products. If it's something that's never been had before, clearly you and I are both, in the blind until you put it out in the market and tested it. So this is generally looking at the day-to-day, the 30,000 products that they've had in stock this year, last year, the year before, and will next year. A brick's a brick. I stopped being a builder's merchant in 1992, and a brick's still a brick.
although now we all seem to be spending money on old bricks because we like the look of them. That's the irony of it all. And I have to say, I've looked at a number of our customers' product lists, and all the new stuff seems to have lasers in it. I'm quite jealous of everything. Seems to have lasers in it. It seems to be like laser guided measuring kits and all sorts. So clearly I picked the wrong trade. I should be on the other one. But all very futuristic. So thank you, Alan. So, In terms of, I think we've managed to talk for 30 minutes without talking about the C word, and that is coronavirus and COVID. What impact have you seen this particular pandemic causing the building merchants?
It's caused them product shortages. So as some of the big plants, so the brick manufacturers, the cement manufacturers, have shut their plants in response to the government's requests, that's not started up, because to get a brick plant going is a 6-week project. So the supply of raw materials hasn't followed the demand from DIYers like yourself and the building profession that's kept going. So you've got potentially the ability to put the price up, but how much you put the price up relative to upsetting your long-term customer? How do you distribute products amongst your customer base? If somebody new comes in, how much do you let them have product? So it's around the supply and demand situation, which is short-term until the production catches up with the ability of the market to take those products. And that's probably the biggest challenge out there today.
Yeah, I'd certainly agree with that, because we help. The reason that I'm so pleased to have Alan on here is because we dovetail quite nicely. So BlackCurve supports with the pricing decisions of the online space. So the building merchants that are selling online, maybe to likes of myself, right, who just wants to buy the occasional product, okay, and you're supporting sometimes actually a lot of from a building merchant perspective, the majority of their customers might walk into the physical store and might turn up. They're physically loading the goods onto their vans or trucks or equivalent, right? Yep. And so the one thing that I very much found, and we've touched upon it earlier, about competitor data and being mindful or actually ignoring it probably is sometimes a better decision. And I'll ask you about how you tackle that in a moment. But certainly during the COVID era, we've really supported the online players by using the supply metrics in the pricing decision. So it means that if you're not going to be restocked, or you've only got a certain amount of stock each week of a product, because you can track the supply, you don't sell that product too cheaply. Okay, because that hurts. That really hurts when you do that. And definitely during the early stages of lockdown, the building merchants that had turned on that particular functionality and used supply driven decisions from their pricing massively outperformed the ones that didn't. And as we kind of, are we going to enter in a second lockdown? We won't talk about that, but because that will open up a whole can of worms. But there's a potential that might happen, and therefore, although I'm pretty confident that from what I've been reading, supply chains have got are ramping up quite nicely to support the next potential lockdown. You've got to make sure that you consider, the data sets you've mentioned is transactional data. During the COVID era, actually supply data, stock data became really valuable when making decisions. And actually, as we eased out of lockdown, we certainly found our algorithms were taking the foot off the gas on that particular part of the decision making, right? Because if supplies are plenty, you don't need to worry. And I think this comes back to the earlier point about people expect, an assumption that people expect to get a discount, or they've been trained to get a discount. A lot of us know we're in COVID. A lot of us know we're in lockdown. A lot of us know there's a supply problems. So we're not going to get pissed off or upset if the price goes up slightly, because that can be communicated, right? Because we know supply chains are in trouble. It's when you get into a price gouging territory, which again we'll save for another day, that you're taking advantage. That's an absolute no-no. But it's using all the data sets to your advantage. So I mean, to come back to competitor data, because I think we've primarily up to this point spoken about when you don't have access to competitor data, it's using your transactional data and so forth. In your space, so when there's one potential customer, even a customer of yours has got like 30,000, when they start working with you, 30,000 customer specific prices, can you even fathom getting competitor data for one of your customers' competitors if they themselves have got 30,000 customer? Is it a fool's game to try and get access to it? What's your experience been?
So it's a very difficult game, certainly. So the only way you can get the true price, as opposed to the price that's claimed, is by looking at either a quote or an invoice. And we've developed an app for the sales team who, if they're in a customer who's going, "Oh, I'm going to cheaper it down the road, show me the quote," they can take a picture of it, and that feeds directly into the algorithm. So that's not covering 30,000 products every day. It's getting the odd snippet of where things are going, but there's still a danger of following it down, because this is about what people are prepared to pay in buying that product from you. And what you are supplying them with is more than a product. You're supplying them with a credit line. You're supplying them with a delivery function. You're supplying them with a delivery within a timeline and the certainty of it. So the price they are paying is not the price from the product. And the price from somewhere else might be less, but if you can't get it to the site, it doesn't make any difference how cheap it is. The competitor price is only part of a much more complicated jigsaw. And if it wasn't, people like Marks and Spencer's and John Lewis wouldn't exist.
Absolutely. I think they're sometimes the cheapest, but by and large they're not, right? So
and they don't try to be. But people, they're offering something that other supermarkets, for example, Lidl and Aldi aren't offering. But there's still plenty of people going to Marks and Spencer's. I go and get my Christmas dinner things from there, and I can tell you how big the queue is. It's out of the door and around the corner, and they are definitely categorically not the cheapest. But their offer in terms of quality, in terms of the whole experience, is different. There is different people in the market. So just because you're not the cheapest doesn't mean to say people won't come to you and buy. If the rest of your offering, in terms of your, how many days credit you give, all of those things make up the total price somebody's prepared to pay. not just the product.
And I'll come back to something that you said earlier that I as a term that I really like is willingness to pay, right? And I think that from from everything is what you're trying to use the data to support you to identify what is the customer's willingness to buy this product now at a certain price. Okay, and you're using all the cues to help you work out, work out from different angles what that is, right? And if only you're looking at competitor data, it's simply who is going to blink first. Okay, that's got nothing to do with the customer's willingness to pay. It's just who's got the biggest pockets, I suppose, for want of a better word, or who's willing to accept a lower margin than your nearest neighbor. Whereas if in your space you're using data sets, like what have customers previously paid for this product, and how can I use that to work out, well, hang on a minute, well, if I know this customer is 10 times the size of this other customer and they're willing to pay a higher price, I don't need to give it at this lower price for this other customer. It's about using all of the various different terms to kind of just bring it all together and synthesize it. So let's come back to, you've done your proof of concept with a building merchant, and they like it, they sign up with you. How do you do you rip up the rule book then? Do you say, right, let's stop, let's get rid of these 30,000 terms, let's go with our suggestions? How do you manage that with them? How do you, is it you take more and more products over time? How does the relationship go from there?
And the answer is very much what they would like to do. And we said we've done it where let's just do one product group at a time and let's move it out, because it's generally you've got to do it with other things. So you have to put it with some staff training, because the staff have had all of this years have been beaten by customers, and they think they have no power when they do have the power. Because it was like, no, I'm not going to sell you the bricks, you can't build a house. So it's very much perceived as the customer has all the power and the sales advisor has no power. No, they have different power, and it's a mutual respect. So it's giving the right price and helping the sales advisor understand that. So I'll tell you what I mean by that. And so it's a car parts one. I was in a branch, and a call came for a customer, and the sales advisor looked at the price of the product, and his immediate comment was, "That's expensive. Let me see what I can do." The customer could have had a Rolls Royce on a ramp that had to go out that night, and he didn't care about it. But the sales advisor always assumed the price was the answer, and it wasn't the answer. And you've got to train the staff that it's not the answer; it's part of the answer. So we will roll it out in a way that fits with them, branch by branch, depending on their ERP system, product group by product group. But it's done best alongside educating the staff as to why you're doing it, and that it's not detrimental to the customer. It's actually positive to the customer and positive to you.
And sometimes, I mean, change management, I think sometimes a lot of software implementation, a lot of projects, non-software projects, they forget the human beings that are using them, right? And sometimes the change management piece is a bigger piece than itself. If you're to get kind of value out of this product, I want to touch upon something which you mentioned earlier. Do you work out, for example, what the average discount is being offered, and then does the algorithm calculate what the right price is and then put the discount on top of it, and then that's what's communicated? Or are you sending off kind of two prices? How do you manage the change management piece if it's going to take a longer time to train staff members out of old habits?
Right. So assume we're not training them, and we know they're going to give a customer a discount, we know whatever range we give to sales advisors, on average, they will always give things in the bottom third of that price range. They will never stick to the top third of the price range. So knowing what that delta looks like between what we want them to, what we think the price is, and where we're going to get to when we give them a range, we put our price in that bottom third, so that they're going to give the customer a discount. He feels good because he's got the discount, of the perceived discount, but we still end up on our target price. But coming back to it, the whole model looks at the conversion rate, so that the volume to price is always remain constant. So if your volume starts to drop, you can drop the price to put your volume back up. So in terms of the sales advisor, his quantity of sales is always the same, albeit his gross margin contribution is rising.
And are you calculating the discount from the list price, or are you communicating specific raw prices for each customer? How does that work?
So we are calculating almost the starting price of academic interest. We are calculating what that customer is willing to pay, because sometimes the list price can be wrong. So when we look at where a builder's merchant is losing margin, or there's constant discounting going on, it could be that the product price is set wrong in the first place. Because the concept of setting a list price is usually just totally arbitrary. There's no science to it whatsoever, and sometimes it's set wrong, so you see excess discount because that's set wrong in the first place. So secondly, as I said, you've got the sales advisor that feels his only trick in his bag is to offer discounts. So I can tell you, as a general principle, 80% of the discounts come from 20% of your sales advisors. So, but you won't know until I've shown you is which ones they are.
Name and shame, is that?
No, it's name and train.
And how do you set the prices online? I suppose that's kind of moving into our territory, right? In terms of, I mean, we actually see a disconnect with a lot of our customers, that their online price is almost like treated as a separate customer. It's also, because it is, to a certain extent, it is a completely different customer profile. I mean, increasingly, especially because of COVID, we're seeing a shift to maybe some of the customers that would have historically gone into the store of actually using the online using the various apps or using the online website. So how are you witnessing them setting the prices for the online store? I mean, what kind of pricing strategies are you seeing the building merchants use for the list price or the website price?
So in terms of the website, I see it in two ways. One is the headline price to get people to engage with them. That would be the consumer type I'm going to buy. And secondly is the customer who has an online account. So the online account, which is just like going into the store, but it's online, is much easier because you've got the full data set. The problem with somebody coming to the online as a virgin without any history, it's getting that price low enough to attract them in, because they probably don't appreciate the whole value. And that's more the areas you do, which is looking at what competitors are putting products out there for, and generally what's happening in the industry. And that's much harder to be scientific in the way we do. The other half about it falls much more into your camp, but they need to improve it all. Where I get frustrated with builders merchants is you need the both. You need the online store to attract people in, but you also need to give your regular customers an opportunity of logging in where you can give them the bespoke prices. Otherwise, they're not going to get the price they want, they're going to get disjointed. Or you end up having to lower the prices of your online store so low that you're giving money away, and it starts to impact on customers who are paying more in the branches. And we've seen that as well. And that causes the conflict in the builders merchants, where the people doing the on price are putting prices online lower than they're achieving in the store.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think that's why I'm a firm believer in as much transparency and as much communication between the various teams. And one of my first things when I go into, well, it's any company, but, you know, because we're talking specifically about, I'm talking about any company that has multiple customer types, you know, and building merchants is one of them. You've mentioned automotive is another one. And there are many other examples of it, is making sure that the pricing teams, the people responsible for are if they're separate entities, so if the online is managed by the marketing team and the price lists are, I don't know, managed by the FD, for example, in a lot of cases, making sure that they're tightly in tuned, because there will be a time, if they're not tightly in tuned, where some clever bod who normally rocks into the store decides, you know what, I'm just going to search online and have a look, and it's like, well, hang on a minute, what is this? Like, this product is so much cheaper online, or even the reverse of, hang on a minute, I get a 50% discount. Right, why am I getting a 50% discount on other products? You know, so it can work kind of both ways. And so I think making sure that they're in sync. I mean, certainly I'm just conscious of time, but certainly to kind of whistle stop through from us using the data sets available, whilst you can't necessarily do customer specific pricing, because you have the ability of having a login and not having to display to each customer what their prices are. You can still use the sales history, voting with the clicks of, right, what price point has it been historically? How well has that price converted? And that tells you what is the willingness to pay for that particular product. Okay. I mean, and then that's primarily what BlackCurve does. That's primarily how we make the decisions. Okay. I mean, we do have the ability to dovetail competitor data on the top of that, but actually the maths is using the sales data as the primary driver, because that is people's clicks. That is people's will. That's the reality. That's what's happening, right? Okay. Yes, competitor data. It's using this over here, the sales history, to work out where competitors have changed the price, how much has this influenced it versus what the competitors are doing, and then that enables you to over time work out, is this product market driven, as in I have to maintain parity for parity, or do I have such a good brand or such a good supply or such a good return policy or whatever it is that means I can ignore the competition. You know, I mean, I'm summarizing, you know, a hell of a lot of maths in a short space of time, but that's primarily what we're trying to do here. And I think treating, to a certain extent, yes, you do have different customer buyers on your online world, but actually, because your price is there for all to see, you've got to treat them as kind of one entity. And then if you want to do then customer specific pricing, that's when you use things like coupon codes or special marketing emails or so forth to do that more you know, I suppose personalized shopping experience. So I think you know, competitor data is useful to a degree, but it's not the answer. There's many data sets.
So the key, I think, what we both bring is the world that builders, merchants, and indeed other people operate is getting more complicated. There is more data. It is moving faster. And you can't do an Excel spreadsheets anymore. You need to move to tools that match the speed and the complexity of the problem you're trying to solve. And if you don't, you'll get left behind. And you get left behind and leave money on the table, leave money on the table in your online world, leave money on the table in your branches world. And the money you leave there doesn't do you any good either. And that's the sad thing about it. You leave it there and the customer doesn't feel any better about you.
And one of the words that seems to be the buzzword flying around, and is very true, is digital efficiency. The businesses that are doing well, to perform well during COVID and will continue to perform well, are those that are investing in automation, in smarter decision making, and certainly, you know, leaving money on the table, it hurts, right? It hurts. Yeah. And actually, you know, there's some complex maths that are behind it, but actually, once you crack it, the returns are huge. The returns are massive. Yeah. Like these are the ability to hire if you get this money back, you can invest in other parts of your business. If it's not a private equity backed business and it's, I don't know, a family building merchant, this is like dividend changing moments, right? So this is massive.
For every 1% we can raise your gross margin, that's typically a 10% increase in your net profit.
I have some of that. That's so. I think this is material, right? This is. It's not a woolly metric. This is tangible financial returns in your back pocket by getting pricing back, and it's not going to happen overnight, right? But it is. But once you've installed it, it's iterative, and within a few months, you're getting these sizable returns, and then throughout the first year, you've banked a hell of a lot of returns from this. So I think just as we look to wrap up there, Alan, was there anything else that you'd like to say at this stage?
No, thank you for having me. I'm sure if anybody wants to talk to us, we'll be in touch. And the data discovery bit is free.
Well, there you go. So you can find out more about Alan's company at Bubo.ai. Thank you very much, Alan, for joining us today. I've learned a lot about your business, and I think I look forward to continuing our partnership as the months and year progresses. So we have been BlackCurve. This is our podcast, E-commerce Matters. We help e-commerce businesses make pricing decisions. This podcast is available on all major podcasting platforms. Look forward to welcoming you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.